While I'm proud of Senate Bill 2, I was the sponsor of it in 2013. It was a good bill, but it wasn't the great bill that we really needed. But one thing I've learned in this business and in this town is not to give up the good for the sake of the perfect. But it put off a lot of tough decisions. And now that we have a willing partner in Governor Matt Bevin and the Republican majority in the House led by Speaker Hoover and his 63 other members, I think we're willing to tackle the pension problem with the level of seriousness and commitment and hard choices that it's going to require. CERS, of course, is in better shape than any of them, and everywhere I go, in particular, I'm having a lot of law enforcement officials ask me, what about my pension? And I say, look, first of all, the most dangerous thing that could happen is for the General Assembly to do nothing. If we do nothing, that is the most risky step. So we've got to make changes. But what I tell them is, look, you're in CERS, hazardous duty. You're better off than just about any public sector employee or retiree. But we still have to make significant changes, and I suspect that we will sometime later this year. I voted for it in committee during this past session. Senator Joe Bowen, of course, was a strong advocate for that, and I'm on the State and Local Government Committee, and I voted for it to get out of committee. But we decided not to pass it on the floor and wait to consider it as part of the overall pension reform package should we get to that point in the General Assembly. And I think good arguments can be made for separating CERS, and we'll see how things go as we put the bill together as to whether or not that will become a reality. We're not near ready. We don't have any sort of agreement or proposal on what to do or where we're headed. I still think we could do it in September. But, I would say September, October, November. But there's only one person, according to the Constitution, who can call that special session, and that's Governor Bevin. And I do believe he is committed to doing that. And we continue to work with him and his administration, as well as leaders from the House of Representatives, to try to come up with something that we think we can get the votes on. It's going to be very difficult. We're going to ask members to take some difficult votes. We're even further away from an agreement on what to do on taxes than we are on pensions. We've spent a lot of time preparing for pension reform. We've passed some pension reform. We know what's left on the table as the options. Tax reform is a more nebulous and harder to define situation that we find ourselves in. There is not a single vote in the Senate Republican caucus, and I doubt in the House Republican caucus, for tax reform that raises taxes on the first day it goes into effect. In general, our party is for a more broad-based tax plan that is more in line with a modern economy. It would, for example, tax production less and consumption more. Think Florida, Tennessee, Texas, the places where everybody's moving because they have no personal income tax. Probably not a good idea. You add that extra layer of bureaucracy, and I don't think that's a good step to take. The governor is trying to develop a more strategic way to fund roads based on data, based on economic development and safety and congestion mitigation and things like that, to come up with a road plan that is prioritized appropriately and fits the amount of money that we have. whether the gas tax will be part of the mix, either as part of the transportation budget next year or as part of tax reform, is really to be determined. But I think from a long-term point of view, we're going to have to, as a country, take a longer and deeper look into how we pay for roads and bridges in America. I think the Kentucky comeback is underway based on the bills we passed this session, like right to work and repealing the prevailing wage. The first step of a couple more we need to take on tort reform and the education reforms that we passed. I think the Kentucky comeback is underway, but I think to complete it, we have to send a strong message on pension reform that we're willing to deal with a tough problem. And I think we've got to make our tax code more business friendly and have a tax code that encourages existing business to stay in Kentucky and to grow, and to incentivize, based on the tax code, businesses that aren't located in Kentucky to consider Kentucky as a place to do business. That's how we then create the more revenue that we all agree we need to put more money into the pension system. I think you're going to see us in the future be a hub for manufacturing and tourism. And as a legislator, I think we need to continue to take steps to remove artificial barriers to free enterprise. It's one of my favorite sayings. It's what I stand for. It's what our caucus stands for. We need to continue to look at ways to remove artificial barriers to free enterprise, because that creates economic opportunity. That creates an incentive for individuals and companies to invest in Kentucky, to invest in our people, and to create well-paying jobs, which leads to a good quality of life, a great place to raise a family, and the kind of revenue that we need to sustain our state budget, which is going to be driven, major decisions are going to be driven for probably the next 20 years based on digging our way out of this pension hole. I'm happy to be here at this time because I think when people look back in the history books, they're going to look at this as a time of incredible positive change for Kentucky. And I think we proved during the 30 days of the legislative session that we're capable of leading, we're capable of keeping our campaign promises, and that we still have a lot of work to do, but I believe that the best is yet to come.